couple months ago, my best friend Bryce moved away to a town I'd never heard of before. He had just landed his dream job. It was gutting to say the last, but worse than that. He practically ghosted me after he left. I sent a few texts here and there, even rang him a few times, but heard nothing in return. Having been close friends since we were kids, the experience was jarring and definitely shook my trust in friendship as a concept. Thankfully, he recently sent me a text message, apologising for the radio silence and claiming that moving and starting a new position had taken over his headspace. He told me I should visit him in his new haunt, and I enthusiastically accepted. We carved out a week that worked for both of us, and the plan was set. Armed with a backlog of Spotify playlists to keep me company, I plugged the address he provided into my GPS and went on my way. It ended up being a lengthy and confusing drive through roads unfamiliar. Finally, I arrived in his neighbourhood. I took in the scenery. This new neck of the woods was bizarre, to say the least. On the same street, housing tacky-looking detached homes, stood Gothic-looking manors straight out of a Victorian novel. Way too many convenience stores here for such a small community, and did I mention the town centre? Well, wouldn't you have it? It was a collection of skyscrapers piercing through the clouds that looked sleeker than anything I'd ever seen before in my city girl life. The town planner clearly had a fragmented personality. I pulled into the driveway of Bryce's fancy cottage. Really, Bryce. A cottage. Ran up the steps and rapped at the door. He peeked out through his living room curtains, and ever the goofball I knew and loved shot me a puzzled look for minutes before he finally opened the door. I flung into him and gave my brother Bear a big hug. Dude seemed tense. "Friend," I exclaimed. "Rose, you're here," he replied. "Of course. Dude, you made us plan the trip down to the hour. You've gotten mad organised since we last spoke." I settled into the cosiest couch I could find in his living room and let the snug air of his new place flood my senses. It was blissful. I had to admire what he'd done with the place. It felt like the culmination of years of settling in, not some place he had just signed a lease for. "Well," I started. "Clearly you've struck it big with a new gig. All that's left for you now is finding a girlfriend so you can do all that build-a-family nonsense everyone's always yapping about." "Yeah. Hey, let me get you some coffee, alright?" He walked into the kitchen. More curt than I remembered him ever being. I wondered if the girlfriend comment threw him off. It was just a joke, friend. He returned moments later, coffees in hand. He handed me one of the mugs, then sat opposite me on another sofa. "So, I gotta say this. Area? Town? Lil city?" Google wasn't helpful. This neighbourhood is pretty quaint. He looked out the window. "Yeah, no, it's interesting." I waited for him to break from his stare. He wasn't being particularly hostly. I interrupted with more small talk. "Well, how are you settling in? How's life?" He leaned back in his seat and scratched the back of his head. "Yeah, I'm settling in fine. It's been busy. Definitely spend most of my time thinking about work." "Yeah, tell me more about that. You were pretty tight-lipped about it on text. Is the job everything you hoped it'd be?" "Not exactly." I poker-faced through the uncomfortable silence, hoping he'd say more. "Like," he finally continued, "it's definitely not what I studied. Nothing at all like what they pitched me either. It's pretty out there." "Well, what are you doing exactly?" He hesitated. I could tell he was escaping up into his head. "I think my coffee needs a bit more cream. BRB. He left the room again. Yes, he's the kind of guy to say the acronym out loud. I pondered in his absence. Dude was a secret super genius who could land a gig just about anywhere, a job that required him to move to the middle of nowhere and leave his loved ones behind had to be nothing short of astounding. But hearing him now, he just seemed tired. Uninspired even. I wondered how long this move was really going to last. I stopped myself from ruminating further. This was too much honest reflection for what was supposed to be a vacation. A selfie was in order. I pulled out my phone, coffee in hand, and Bryce's welcoming abode in the background. I already had the caption for the Instagram story. Finally found him, you guys. I waited for him to round the corner. He emerged. I clicked. Snap. The light flashed to immortalize a pretty derpy-looking me. And Bryce, mug caught in mid-fall, with his arm outstretched, violently screaming, "No!" Paralyzed by his yell, I turned to clock the shattered mug and liquid coffee beans spilling onto his hardwood floor. Shit. I looked up at him. Sorry, what happened? Did I just... His attention turned from me to the front door. He ran to it, checked the lock, then pulled at the door as if to test its integrity. He did the same with the balcony door, muttering to himself along the way. I'm so stupid. Of course she was going to take a picture. Why would I be so careless? I should have known I should have fucking known. Hey. I walked up to him. It was just a selfie, Bry. I'm sorry if it caught you off guard. He took a deep breath, and then spoke in a tone that was very unbecoming of the Bryce I knew. It's my fault. I'm the moron. You always take pictures. It's what you fucking do. And what did I do? I left you alone twice. I fucked us. Sorry, but you're being incredibly rude right now. Explain yourself. A stern look. We're not supposed to take photos. I raised my eyebrows. Not supposed to take photos of what? Your house? Anything. Anything at all in the town. I became convinced this was all an elaborate bit he'd been planning in anticipation of my arrival. I chuckled accordingly. That sounds... stupid. A touch of softness returned to his eyes. I was hoping I'd get chance to ease you into the explanation, but fuck, there's no easy way to break this to you, is there? What on earth are you talking about? His glance returned to the living room window. He stared out for what felt like an eternity. I idled with him, secretly wondering if my friend had become a head case since I last saw him. He'd never shown signs of being particularly paranoid or volatile, but maybe something had changed since the move. The sound of soft tapping against the window wasn't immediately obvious. When I finally noticed it, I saw a silhouette in the front yard below. Someone, or rather something, was outside, stretching and reaching to try to peer into our elevated living room window. Hide behind the sofa, said Bryce. Are you for real? Do it, now. The desperation in his voice was convincing. I begrudgingly followed the orders and crouched against the end of the sofa I was just sitting on. I peeked ever so slightly to watch Bryce approach the window. There's nothing here for you, Bryce yelled at the stranger in the front yard. A beat of silence. The figure outside slowly lifted its hands, clutching a crumpled piece of paper between them, which it then pressed against the window. It was the selfie I had just taken. Instinctively I laughed. It took a few seconds for logic to flood my brain, and for me to wonder how on earth a stranger had a print out of a photo I just took. That isn't ours. No photos were taken here. The photo disappeared from view. Then the entity raised a single finger, tapping the window and pointing in my direction. No one else is here? Bryce held his ground for a moment. Then he closed the curtains. He sat beside me on the living room floor and placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. I was in denial. How is that even? Shh. Bryce interrupted. "He'll be gone soon." Minutes passed, and the tapping finally subsided. "Like I said," Bryce broke the silence, "I was hoping we'd get a second to settle in first." How does someone even do that? Like, technologically, how the fuck could someone do that with my phone? I don't get it. "I'm gonna need you to calm down for a second." "Bryce, what the fuck is going on?" With a grimace and a restless shuffle, he struggled to find the right words. "So," he finally spoke, "let's rewind a bit. I moved to a new town for a job that I couldn't turn down." "Right. When I got here, I knew pretty much immediately that something was very wrong. First, I thought I was renting this place, but when I arrived, there was a deed taped to the front door signed in my name. My boss for the job I hadn't even started yet stopped by after, congratulating me on the role in the new place. He told me my pay was going to be much higher than initially discussed, but that the scope of the role would also be way different. I asked him to explain what he meant, and he just said that I'd figure it out over time. He was insistent that if I did whatever he asked in a timely manner, that I'd live a safe and fulfilling life. And so, for some strange fucking reason, you then thought it'd be a great idea to text me to come here." No, I never texted you. I never texted anyone. I ignored everyone's calls, messages, everything. I didn't want anyone to get sucked up into this nonsense with me. But I guess it didn't matter anyways. Something reached out to you, pretending to be me. Which means that something wants you here. I tensed up. "So, we should get the fuck out of here then, right? Why didn't you ever leave?" "Huh, funny enough, I almost did. But then someone explained the ambulances to me." "Ambulances? Yeah, they should be here soon." Bryce put a finger to his lips. The room went quiet for minutes, until the distant roars of an ambulance reached our ears. Bryce got up and moved to the kitchen window. I followed. The siren's blare grew louder and clearer. Outside the window, we could see it approaching. It turned a corner and parked on the road only a few houses away. Then, I saw it. The back door of the ambulance opened up, and out stepped a man cloaked in thick garb from head to toe. He pulled a stretcher out the back door. Then another. Then another. All of the stretchers had people on them. People whose heads had been completely pulverized. Clumps of crimson-red flesh and cartilage where faces should have been. Once all of the stretchers had been pulled out and left on the road, the cloaked man re-entered the ambulance from the back, then closed the doors. The siren blasted again, and the vehicle drove off. Bry, what the fuck? What the actual fuck? I'm freaking the fuck out." Bryce just stared at the stretchers on the street. They were gently rolling off in different directions. "Oh man," he said, noticing a particular demolished body on one of the stretchers. "I like that guy. We went grocery shopping together one time. Who the fuck are those people?" "People who tried to leave. That's what happens to them. And they're just left on the street. Sometimes. Other times they're brought to the incinerator, or buried, or chopped up, or occasionally dropped off at someone's house." I was on the verge of a full-blown panic attack. Instinctively, I pulled out my phone and queued up the numbers 911. Wait, Rose. You don't want to do that. Rose, stop." His words bounced right off me. My brain was on autopilot. My body was moving on its own now. I ran into one of the rooms, slammed the doors shut, and then leaned against it. He knocked violently. "Rose, you don't know what you're doing. Please hang up. Please." Everything was fine. I had a half-baked plan in mind. I would call the number, then ask the operator to transfer me to a different county. The NYPD. They'd know what to do. I hit call and waited for an answer. Finally, 911. What's your emergency? Hi, I replied. I need to get connected to the closest police department outside this jurisdiction. Maybe New York's? Sure. Can you let me know what your emergency is? Bryce pounded with even more force. Yeah, so there was an ambulance. It stopped on our street. It had bodies in it. Dead bodies on stretchers that looked like they'd been completely fucked up, and then the bodies were just thrown on the street and... Right. And sorry. These were people who were trying to leave town. What? I'm sorry. Could you say that again? Yes. Were the bodies in the stretchers people who tried to leave the area? She said the last 6 words slowly, as if she thought I was stupid. Stunned, I tried to redirect her back to the point. There was also a man who showed up in our yard. He had a picture of me. There's no way he could have had a picture of... Right. And sorry, did you take a photo before this man showed up? What? Bryce was seemingly ramming the door with his whole body now. I was struggling to keep it closed. Where are you now? We can send someone to you immediately. No thanks. Are you sure, Mom? I promise it'll be fun. Horrified, I hung up. I released my hold on the door, and it burst open, sending me tumbling backwards onto the floor. Bryce entered, looming above me in anger. You didn't tell them where we were, did you? I desperately shook my head. No, I didn't. He sighed in relief, as if his whole body were exhaling with him. Thank fucking God. He addressed me with disappointed dad intensity. You have to stop doing that. Fucking please. If they called someone to this place, you could have gotten us killed, or even worse. I've heard stories, man. The people in this neighborhood talk. I stopped myself from speculating on what worse meant. Where the fuck are we, Bry? I asked. What the fuck is this? I don't know. He wore exasperation on his face. I could tell he was at his own breaking point. I got up and gave him a hug. More for my sanity than anything else. As I held him, the sinking, skin-crawling sensation of feeling trapped consumed me. I wanted to sob, but I just couldn't. We returned to the living room and tried our best to settle in again. I'm trying, he said, to piece together exactly what's going on here. I have some idea of the things we should avoid doing, but still, there are lots of question marks. Uh-huh, I said nervously. I took a quick peek outside and spotted a sign, shaped like an arrow pointing to the left. It read, "Exit this way." Before I could ask more questions, I heard his phone vibrate. He checked it, then sighed. They have another job for me, he said. Another job? Yeah. A task I was hoping I could avoid for some time. Wish me luck. He went back to his room. When he emerged, he was wearing a cloak not too dissimilar to the one the ambulance driver was wearing. He left some time ago now. He gave me some clear directives before stepping out. Keep the doors locked until he's back, and try not to panic. I'll try not to overthink the second one. He also showed me a special hand signal that he'd use when he comes back. He told me that I should, under no circumstances, open the door until he flashes the gesture. It's a good thing he told me. 'Cause only an hour after he left, it felt like he had already returned. He's standing at the door now, softly knocking while wearing a wide smile on his face. He hasn't flashed the signal yet, so I'll probably hold on letting him in. Imposter Bryce, as I've penned him, stuck around for a couple of hours before shuffling off to God knows where. Once he was gone, I took refuge in the bedroom that looked the least worn and tried my best to get some shut-eye. Needless to say, I slept like the opposite of a baby. Ambulance sirens sung throughout the night. Occasional sounds of shuffling in the backyard bushes rang in my ear. Struggling to fall asleep, I got up to look out the bedroom window. Outside, the street was empty, save for a man a block away, hugging a lamppost and looking right up at me. Fucking hell. The night, and my attempts to rest, became a blurry half-awake, half-asleep haze. Eventually, the sound of knocking at the front door interrupted my drowsy nap. I left the bedroom, approached the sound, and looked through the door's peephole, expecting some horrifying sight or nightmarish creature. It was Bryce. He was flashing the same hand signal we'd agreed upon earlier. After a minute of gearing up, I accessed the bravery needed to open the door. He entered, and to my great relief, didn't shapeshift into a warlock and rip my face off. Cool of him. He didn't say much, not even a hello. His face wore misery, and his weird culty Snuggie outfit had splatters of blood on it. He depressingly sauntered to his room, mumbling incoherently under his breath. Weirdly, having him home now was enough to temporarily override the PTSD I was feeling from the last 24 hours of mindfuck. I went back to the room, and within minutes, I was lights out. When I woke up, it felt like I'd emerged from the best sleep I'd ever had, to the point that it took me a good 20 seconds to remember exactly where I was, and for the misery to creep in. I looked at the clock and saw that the time was only 7:15 a.m. I was flabbergasted. No way that was only an hour of sleep. I entered the dining room. Bryce was already breakfast ready. Plates were set out on the table. "Does time work differently here?" I asked, taking a seat. Bryce sized up my outfit. I was still wearing my clothes from yesterday. "I should have remembered to lend you some PJs. My bad." I grabbed a forkful of scrambled eggs. I was hoping he'd start curbing his habit of avoiding my questions. I took a bite. "Not bad. Time," he ruminated. "Not sure. There's enough weird stuff happening here that I don't really dwell on it." "Fair enough," I said. "So, I was instructed to bring you with me to today's job." I almost spat egg all over the table. "Bring me? Me explicitly?" "Yep." He turned his phone around and leaned across the table to show me. "Well, I'll be..." There it was, wrapped in a grey bubble. The most recent text in a thread. "This morning, you will visit the Parker Group building and audit their operations. Bring Rosalind Beckett with you." I sighed. "I assume I have to come, because not following rules here is a bad idea." He shot me ungracefully with his finger guns. "You're catching on, friendo." I decided not to protest. After yesterday's shenanigans, it was probably best I followed Bryce's lead. We promptly finished up breakfast. Bryce basically made a beeline to his car in the driveway after. Dude took his job seriously. I joined him outside, half afraid that a banshee would jump out of the bushes or something. But things were relatively tame, actually. The only thing out of the ordinary was a gathering taking place in the Victorian mansion across the street from us. Through their window, I noticed a gallery of well-dressed socialites all sitting in a circle and reading a book together. A book club at this hour. I rode shotgun in Bryce's Audi. When the fuck did he get an Audi? As he drove us to the skyscrapers in the town centre. "So, what's the escape plan?" I asked. I've always been particularly shit at small talk. "I'm sorry. I'm assuming everyone in the town is trying to get the fuck out of Dodge. What's the strategy? Friendly reminder that your head gets pulverized if you try to escape, Rose. Or did you already forget about yesterday? Yeah, but isn't anyone theory crafting? Figuring out some way to break from this hellscape? Huh. I think we're all still in the learning how not to die phase of things, he replied. Disappointing. Is it only going to take me a few days to become just as resigned to things as Bryce is? I distracted myself from the melancholy by carefully eyeing the buildings we drove past. Library, convenience store, sex shop, convenience store, auto parts, steakhouse, convenience store. This place is fucking weird. So, I said, you ever been to this building before? No. Uh-huh. And what about auditing? That a thing you do regularly? First time. But you know what to do, right? Yep. I was given clear directions. Go inside. Tell them why we're visiting. Let them explain what they do. Let them take us where they need to take us. If anyone has any concerns, we say that we're friends of Meredith Lane. Right. And who is Meredith Lane? No clue, he said. Oh, right, another rule. Avoid small talk with the employees. We closed in on the high-rises. Bryce slowed to find parking. We stepped out of the car, the looming building ahead. We walked under the protective canopy as stone pillars framed our path. I noticed groups of people lurking behind the columns, peeking their heads out, most glaring, some smiling. Bryce, I'm kind of scared. Don't worry about them. They won't do anything. Okay. We reached the entrance. The motion sensor sliding doors parted gracefully, inviting us in. We crossed into the lobby. A very sharp-dressed greeter approached us. Why, hello there, sir. And look, you brought company. Here for an audit, Bryce said briskly. Yes, of course. The folks up on 9 were expecting you. Great. We'll be on our way. Bryce, all business, walked to the elevator and pressed the button to call. He stared at a framed picture hung on the wall between the lifts. It was a portrait of a stunning luxury car. God, that's a sweet ride, he said. Ding! The elevator arrived. We slipped into the steel box, and Bryce pressed the button for the 9th floor. As it went up. I mean, this isn't too bad. You always wanted to work in a fancy tech office, right? I asked. Yeah, I guess I did. Just took getting trapped in this freaky town for that dream to pan out, huh? I laughed. A little glimmer of our buddy cop dynamic was back, albeit under non-ideal circumstances. He pulled out his phone, seemingly to check the text thread he had with his boss. Alright, so, recap on the rules. If anyone asks, friends of Meredith Lane. Meredith Lane, I echoed. We'll explore, ask the folks what they do, go wherever they ask us to. We'll take notes. We won't make small talk with them. Pretty simple. Got it, I nodded. The lift trembled momentarily as it settled onto the 9th floor. Then, the doors opened. We emerged onto a floor that had pretty tacky-looking decor, I have to say. It looked dated, unbecoming of the prestigious-looking building it was housed in. We sauntered down the hallway, flanked by boardrooms on both sides. It sounded like busy meetings were underway. Bryce entered one of the rooms, seemingly at random. I trailed behind. Inside, a group of gentlemen, all dressed in pristine white shirts, black ties, and sharp dress pants, sat around an aged mahogany table. Looks like they all got the dress memo for today. They momentarily paused their looking up at us with puzzled stares. Here for the audit, Bryce announced curtly. Carry on. Bryce produced a small notebook and pen out of his coat pocket and began jotting down notes. The professionals hesitated briefly before resuming their conversation. So, as I was saying, one of the men said, we've finished the design for the next convenience store. Murmured nods and hums echoed around the table. We need a clear open road leading to the convenience store, another contributed. No congestion whatsoever. I'll oversee that. Again, a chorus of agreement from the room. And what about blood? Another man interjected. Heads turned in his direction. If there's a significant amount of blood outside the convenience store, he seemingly clarified, we'll need assistance to manage it. The pattern continued, murmurs of affirmation shared between the employees. I had to ask myself, what in the ever-loving fuck were they talking about? Yet, my confusion went unshared. Bryce continued to scribble in his notebook, unfazed. I wondered if Bryce noticed the man seated at the end of the table, blood pouring from his eyes onto his fancy shirt. The man, with a disturbing smile, who kept whispering incessantly, blood outside the convenience store, blood inside the convenience store. Thankfully, or maybe regrettably, Bryce seemed oblivious to him. Finishing his note-taking, he left the room, and I followed. We proceeded down the hallway. Seriously, how the fuck does this place not wig you out? That's simple, he replied. I'm desensitized. I am now fully dead inside. Great. We approached the kitchen at the end of the corridor. As we did, the clack of a foosball game filled our ears. We stepped inside to see two players, momentarily distracted, stopping to turn their gaze towards us. Nearby, a man pouring half and half into his coffee froze as he clocked our entrance. You're... he started. Here for an audit, Bryce cut in. Their eyes remained fixed on us, silent and questioning. We're friends of Meredith Lane, Bryce clarified. Slowly the strangers chuckled, their laughter gradually escalating into a roar. Yeah, right. Friends with Meredith Lane, said one. Yeah, you hate her, chimed another. You despise her. The man with the coffee creamer tagged. What are they on about? I whispered out the side of my mouth to Bryce. Don't overthink it. Nothing here makes any sense, he murmured. He stepped forward. All right, that's enough joking around. Why don't you all tell me a bit about what you do? After a brief silence, the coffee man was the first to speak. I'm a firefighter, sir. A firefighter working in a skyscraper. Right. The woman at the foosball table spoke next. I'm an ambulance driver. She noticed the look of fright on my face and clarified, Don't worry, dear, I only drive. A wry smile crept up on the face of the man on the other side of the foosball table. I'm a police officer, occasionally a 911 operator too. I gulped and tried my best to play it cool. I looked away, pretending I was admiring the decor in the room. Bryce, doing his part, eagerly scribbled into his notebook. He lifted his head when he was done. Great! Anything you'd like to show us? The foosball playing officer crept closer. Friends with Meredith Lane, hey? Yep, replied Bryce. Would you like to see her? Sure. The officer led the way, opening a door to reveal another expansive hallway. We trailed closely behind. The trek was longer than I expected. With each step, the white walls of the building started blistering and peeling. Deeper down the path, the overhead lights were now swaying and broken, casting red shadows onto the wall. Through the damp and mouldy, we approached the end of this now dark corridor, reaching a heavy iron door that creaked slightly open. Blood-curdling shrieks could be heard from inside. Our guide to this destination nodded, then turned to leave. "Have fun," he called out, retracing his steps and disappearing down the hall. Bryce stepped through the door first. I trepidatiously tiptoed behind. The screaming stopped the second we entered. The smell of coal and old machinery assaulted my senses. As I eyed what I knew to be the likely source of the screams, it was a woman. She was tied to a chair with metal chains. Her body looked contorted, twisted, bloodied, broken in ways that a person couldn't be. Bones visibly protruded from open wounds all around her. Jagged metal jutted from her chest, neck, and legs. Something about her form didn't make any sense. A man in a thick cloak was crouched beside the woman. "Meredith, it looks like you have some visitors." My face betrayed my attempt to pretend any of this was normal. Side-eyeing Bryce, he didn't look so great either. The man in front of us remained focused on the chained being. "What do we say when we have visitors, Meredith?" A strained, croaky, empty voice left the woman. "We say, 'Hello?'" she gargled, barely. Bryce pulled out his notebook. "Here for an audit. Can you explain what you do?" "Really, Bryce? Still just fucking business about all this?" The crouched man tilted his head to address us. "Of course. As you can see, I manage Meredith Lane. Let me demonstrate." He placed a hand on what was left of Meredith's shoulder. "Meredith, is your leg broken?" No, my leg is fine," she said, spitting blood between laboured breaths. Her leg was most certainly broken. Thrice broken, in fact. The least leg-looking leg I'd ever seen. "Is your chest impaled?" he asked. "No, my chest is not impaled," she groaned. A giant piece of metal poked out from her ribs. "But sure, let's gaslight the poor woman. Is your mouth full of blood? Are you choking?" She struggled to speak again. Blood pooled as the words left her mouth. "No." "And here's the best one," he said, enthusiastically turning to us before asking his final question. "Meredith, are you alive?" It took her longer to respond to this one. She lifted her neck ever so slightly to look at us. Clearly she was in hell, but there was something else in her gaze too. Sorrow, wistfulness, regret. "I'm alive," she said quite lucidly. The cloaked man stood up from his crouch, exceedingly cheerful now. "Isn't that something?" he proclaimed. Bryce just scratched into the notebook. He didn't say a word. I, on the other hand, was mortified. I'd just about reached my threshold. I was seconds from puking. I softly stepped back, exiting the room through the iron door for a much-needed reprieve. Bryce didn't seem to notice, thank God. Back out in the hallway, I noticed a rather nervous-looking man pacing back and forth. After a moment, he came up to me. "How are you holding up?" he asked. I stuck to the rules. "I'm here for an audit." He looked disappointed. "Of course you are. Let me guess. No photos, no small talk. Friends with Meredith Lane." "Huh? Nah, I wasn't falling for it." "That's right. I am friends with Meredith Lane. That is why I'm here," I enunciated clearly, speaking slowly and thoroughly, as one usually does when they're lying. He scratched his head, then turned to leave. He looked back at me once more, before doing so. "You know, just once I wish I could talk to someone who found all this shit as horrifying as I do." I pursed my lips. "Fuck it," he said. "I'll figure some way out of this nightmare. Fucking talking to emotionless robots all day," he muttered, walking off. "God damn it." "Wait," I called out. He stopped, then turned. "Let's talk," I said as quietly as I could. He stepped back towards me, He came with an air of nervous desperation. "Holy shit, an actual conversation," he said. "Look, not sure how much time we have, but I have a working theory about this place that I think might piece everything together." "Spill." He leaned into my ear and whispered. He didn't want anyone else to hear this. "Sweetheart, you know you're not supposed to break the rules." He gripped my neck with one of his hands and covered my mouth with the other. "We have to follow the rules." I struggled to get away, but he was much more powerful than he looked. Without them, we... I could feel my breath disappearing. "This is how I die, isn't it?" He squeezed down on my larynx with all of his might. What a stupid fucking way to die. But then, the pressure released. I gasped for breath as the attacker staggered backwards. I guess not. My assailant was recoiling in horror at the sight of Bryce. Emerging from the boiler room, Bryce quickly moved to support me, preventing me from collapsing to the floor. The man backpedaled to his feet and fled down the corridor. Bryce took a step, as if to chase him, then hesitated and turned back to me. "Fucking hell, are you okay?" Bryce asked with concern. "No, not really," I said, coughing. "I'm sorry. I'm a fucking dunce." Bryce squeezed my hand reassuringly. "You're okay. You'll settle in with time." As I gathered my bearings, I heard Bryce's phone buzz again. He checked the text. "Guess our job's done for today," he said. "We can go home now." I didn't let go of his hand as we walked down the corridor. "How'd you scare that dude away?" Once you've been here long enough, you find a way to maneuver the danger." We took the elevator down. Once we were in the lobby, we made a beeline for the exit. Just as we stepped through the sliding doors to the outside, I heard the greeter call from behind. "Please visit us again when you get the chance, Mr. Mayor." Bryce visibly winced at the greeter's call. "Mr. Mayor?" I asked him. "You're the mayor of this place?" He shrugged it off as we walked to the car. "It's just the job they gave me. We can chat more about it later." The drive home was quiet. Between Bryce's surprise role as mayor and his strange midnight job from last night, a swirl of confusion settled in my stomach. Still, riding shotgun with him, I felt safer than I would have without him. But one thing was clear now, more than before. We couldn't stay here. I needed to find a way out for us. Hi everyone, thanks for listening. That story was written by World Away Tweedy. Stick around for part 2 tomorrow night. If you enjoyed it, hit subscribe, like, and maybe join the membership so you can say I was here before she got weirdly famous. Perks include cool emojis, member badges, early access to videos and more. Oh, and I've lowered the top tier price, right down to its minimum, just in case anyone fancies an upgrade. You get everything from the first tier, plus merch discounts, member-only videos, and also have a story written about you if you stay for 3 months. Which would be a pretty cool thing to tell your friends, right? Yes, it would. Don't lie. Speaking of merch, I have merch now, so check that out. A massive shout out to my members. Or rather, member, MarkMathern7322. If you're on a mobile or tablet, please consider hyping the video. It pushes it a tiny bit further out into the YouTube wild. If you really, really enjoyed it, think I have that super thanks button down there somewhere. Even £1 helps me toward my goal of making this a full-time thing. Then I can just have one full-time thing instead of my day job and this full-time. I'm here a lot. Good night.